Back here in the United States, in focus, comedian Bill Cosby is now a convicted criminal. The once beloved actor who was invited into the homes of millions of Americans was found guilty on this day on charges of sexual assault. A Pennsylvania jury of 7 men and 5 women convicted the 80-year-old Cosby on 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault. It's related to Andrea Constand, who says that Cosby drugged and raped her 14 years ago. The emotionally charged case portrayed Cosby as a sexual predator, though his defense said he was an innocent victim of the Me Too movement.
We are very disappointed by the verdict. We don't think Mr. Cosby's guilty of anything, and the fight is not over.
Finally, we can say women are believed, and not only on #MeToo, but in a court of law where they were under oath, where they testified truthfully, where they were attacked.
After the verdict was read in the courtroom, Cosby lashed out and cursed at the district attorney. The district attorney tried to tell the judge that Cosby was a flight risk and should be held behind bars. Cosby said, well, we won't say what he called the district attorney, but in any case, Cosby's lawyers say that they will appeal the verdict, and the judge decided that Cosby can be released. But, of course, he faces a sentencing hearing in the months to come. Joining us now is Venu Varghese, defense attorney and former prosecutor. And Venu, there's a pretty good chance that he's going to go to jail, right?
Yes.
I mean, he can't argue his health. He seems to be fine for an 80-year-old man, so...
Yeah, look, he no longer enjoys the presumption of innocence. The judge would have actually been well within his right to actually incarcerate him today, but he allowed him to stay out. I think that the judge actually got into an argument with the prosecutor because the judge actually didn't believe he was a flight risk.
Now, the theory that the defense has, I suppose, in order to try to keep him out of prison, the theory is that they can actually keep the appeals going, right, and he doesn't serve time until the appeals are exhausted. But a lot of courts, you'll have to fight your appeal literally after you're already behind bars at this point. Correct.
Look, in his case, there are a lot of appellate issues. One of the things to be able to keep him out pending appeal is a chance for success on appeal. I think there is a good chance of success on appeal here.
On what grounds?
The case was involving one victim, one alleged victim, this Costin woman, but 5 other women were allowed to testify against him. So in essence, Cosby had 6 accusers. I mean, how is that remotely fair? He was convicted because he's a bad guy, the Me Too movement, but was he really guilty of this particular crime against this woman? That is really suspect.
But the appeals process, even if it's ultimately successful, that could take a couple of years, and in the meantime, he could spend a couple of years in prison.
Correct. Correct. No, what I'm saying is, though, if the appellate court, he can make a motion. If the judge sentences him to jail, the judge may sentence him to jail pending appeal. So, you know, he could potentially stay out while it's pending.
Given all of the allegations through the years at Bill Cosby, it did seem like the prosecutors tried to tailor this so narrowly so that they would get just at least one conviction as opposed to confusing the case. Is that fair?
I wonder who is the actual person that was the complainant here, because some of the other women who testified against him, one of them blurted out, "You're a serial rapist." The judge struck the comment from the jury to disregard it, but they've heard it. They hear all these women coming out. Well, remember, he's being charged for an assault on this one woman, but all these other women are coming out, this so-called prior acts evidence, which is really a way to just make the guy look like a bad guy. Therefore, you know what he did with all these other women, therefore he must be guilty here.
Venu Varghese, defense attorney and former prosecutor. Venu, thanks for coming in. We appreciate it. Good to have you.
Thank you.
We are awaiting the sentencing for comedian Bill Cosby. A judge has already ruled today that he is a sexually violent predator. They wanted to get that out of the way before the sentencing. Bill Cosby facing up to 10 years in prison after he was convicted in April of drugging and sexually assaulting a woman at his home in 2004. His defense team has asked that he be sentenced to house arrest rather than going to prison, predominantly because of his age. Venu Varghese, a criminal defense attorney and a former prosecutor, on set with me now. Does the old age thing work in court?
It can. It can, particularly his advanced age, his health issues. All of this could play a factor in the sentencing.
All right, I'll let you get the first question out. Let's go now to the breaking news that we're expecting now, we've been told, in the next couple of minutes. So I want to bring back criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Venu Varghese. You and I were just talking off camera about the situation that's going to play out for Bill Cosby. And there were many women who came forth, but this one particular case, prosecutors decided to try. Why?
That was the only one that was left within the statute of limitations. They charged it basically on the last day of the statute, before the statute of limitations ran. They allowed these other women to testify as what's called prior bad act evidence to show that he had a common scheme or plan.
When you hear his attorneys, and right before we went to the president for breaking news from him, you had said that old age can work sometimes. Do you think it works for Bill Cosby, who many people already see has lived a very privileged life? And if you're found to be a sexually violent predator, do you deserve a break in court?
I think for Bill Cosby, I'd be surprised if it does work. I think for most people it can work. You know, you have advanced age, you have somebody with a whole host of health problems, but Bill Cosby, if this judge wants to set an example, is going to slam Bill Cosby to 10 years in jail.
What do you know about Judge Stephen O'Neill in terms of what this particular judge might do?
Well, I think the fact that he allowed during the trial 5 other women to testify is a bad sign for Bill Cosby. Now, there's 2 different ways he can go about this. He could choose to show mercy, which probably anger a lot of people, or he can just put him in jail, which will make him a folk hero.
So when you hear the prosecution say that he would do it again, he's a predator, he's 81 years old. Is that a strong enough argument for the maximum amount of prison time in this case?
I don't think it's a good argument here, because assuming Bill Cosby is a sexual violent predator, I think his hunting days are long over. So here, I think it's a question of punishing him for all the other acts and all these other people that have come out.
I want people to catch the lingo that you just dropped, because you have worked sex crimes in your past as a prosecutor as well. You said hunting days are over.
Right.
Predator, when the judge made that decision, that actually informs the sentencing, I would imagine. It's then taken up to a different level. You're talking hunting. You're talking predator.
Yeah, well, that's a designation for purposes of the Sex Offender Registration Act. So there's levels 1, 2, and 3, 3 being the most restrictive, 3 being a lifetime placement on the sex offender registry list. If he's in jail, puts in 10 years in jail, it's not likely he's going to ever get out. He's going to walk out. There probably will be a death sentence for Bill Cosby.
As we look forward, you said that this particular case with this woman was filed on the last day that it could be because of the statute of limitations. Why did the judge allow other women to come in, and what effect could that have on the sentencing?
Well, the theory which the judge allowed these women to come in was called prior bad acts evidence. So they're coming in to show a common scheme or plan. So they argue that Bill Cosby had a common scheme, a plan of seducing and assaulting women. The problem is that the idea of prior bad acts is basically to show complicated financial schemes and things along those lines. On a sex case, you are really risking the fare of undue prejudice, because particularly some of these women said they used alcohol. I mean, if you're a lot of alcohol's involved in a lot of things.
Many of them, though, did say, some of the women who've come forward, not all of them made it to this courtroom, but some of them have talked to other publications, and some of them have alleged that they were drugged the same way. I mean, there seemed to be some sort of a pattern among women who wouldn't have known each other in any other category.
Right, but it also depends on what Quaaludes were used for. Back in the 70s, it was an inhibition-releasing drug.
So, you know, just to make it clear with people, what they're seeing on the left side of your screen right now is outside that courtroom in Norristown, Pennsylvania, where we expect at any moment now, we're being told that the sentencing will be coming. The verdict in this case we already know, and now this ruling on top of that verdict of sexual assault is by this judge calling Bill Cosby a sexually violent predator. So what will the sentencing be? That's what we are awaiting right now, and we've been told that that could happen at any moment. So we do have our own Fox News team inside the courtroom, and something different, Vanu, that I want to talk to you about. They expect this to take a while to read this sentencing. We've already heard the impact statements. Walk me through what happens next.
So the judge, for purposes of appellate review, what that means is at some point the appellate court is going to look at this case, assuming Bill Cosby's alive to have his appeals heard. They're going to look at this case and they're going to analyze everything he said. So he has to lay out all the factors for sentencing Bill Cosby. So he can't, he has to be very careful here, which you asked a minute ago about what impact the other women testifying could have on sentencing. He has to be careful to say that he is finding it appropriate to sentence Bill Cosby to 10 years in jail for the act of this against this woman. And then he can say, look, the other evidence that came in that was barred by statute of limitations also supports his finding that he's a sexual predator.
All right. This is the first time in the Me Too era that we have seen a celebrity go to trial. And you think it's possible, from what you said, that the judge may make an example of Bill Cosby and he gets the 10 years. We'll see what happens. Stand by, please. We are awaiting the Cosby sentencing. That's coming up. Stay close.